I'm just laughing here because I just made a half an hour long video and computer went to sleep and I lost the whole thing. So probably it wasn't that good anyway. So now I can re-record it and get something even better. And today the topic is Björk. And I'm revisiting Björk. I already made a couple of videos about Björk before, listening impressions, listening sessions, and now I think it was this week or last week. It's been like ages ago. For me, during working days, so much happens in a day that if something happened like 2 days ago, for me it feels like it was like a year ago or maybe another lifetime. And I'm really kind of joking at this because I've been just so busy in my work life and personal life that okay, I give a frame of reference to understand how little time I had. Since April this year, tonight was the first night that I listened to the turntable, that I listened to an album. I haven't even had time during the past half year to listen to music, let alone like crunch out a bunch of videos or just be more engaged in answering comments or just doing, you know, in-depth videos about the background or something like that. So it's truly been anyway. No one is really worried about that, or I would say that's not why you are watching this video. You are watching this video about Björk. And so there was Jürgen's video, and he said that Björk's Medulla album is truly spectacular, and it's really worth to listen to because it give you a treat. And he has Martin Logan's, and when he listened to them with his friend through his Martin Logan, it's just like an amazing experience. It's like swimming in an ocean of vocals, ocean of sound. And Jürgen, that's also my experience. It is beyond spectacular. It's amazing. It's truly fantastic. And I can confirm because today I just yes, Björk. So before making this video half an hour ago, I was just listening to this album again. Just listened another minute into the second LP. Actually, this is a double LP edition, so they cut the tracks extra wide to have a lot more information fit on them. It's still a 33 RPM record, but really wide, hefty grooves, and really it's really audible, that it has a really nice dynamic range, a lot of information content. It absolutely trashes, murders and butchers the digital version. When I listen to both of them, it's just like much better. But also I have to say that my digital version I listened to was the video that's on YouTube. So of course that's lower resolution than a high-res digital file, of course, but still it's spectacular nonetheless. And many of you will say, oh man, your system must really suck if you think that your low resolution YouTube file can come any close to a high-res performance. No, it doesn't come close. And I think probably if you get like a high-res download, it will sound better, much better than the YouTube. But I flip back the ball to those of you who think that that it is impossible to render a low-resolution file spectacularly. If that happens in your system, that when you play your YouTube versus the original, then the YouTube version is bad. Like you can't even listen to it. While the high-res file sounds perfect, YouTube version you can't even listen to it. Then there's something really broken in that system. And I would say not even broken. From my standpoint, it's broken. and but another way of saying it, a much better saying it, is that when you observe that phenomenon, that a lower resolution digital file is unlistenable versus a wonderful experience with its high resolution version, that is happening because the playback system that you use processes the music very, very hard. And I know there's a lot of people who love that, and actually when your system does heavy processing in the sound, then it makes it more spectacular. And that's what current high-end is about. So if you have purchased equipment in the past 5 years, there's almost a 100% guarantee that that system you have purchased is doing very high level of processing. Because this is the sound of the era. This is the sound of the 2020s. And of course most of you would say just, oh János, you're what are you talking about? That's nonsense. What we have today is the best sound we ever had. What we had before is crap. But no, that's not it. So when you spend more time with stereo and you go back to how the sound was played back in different ages, you look at different decades and you restore equipment to which were the best of those eras to their highest potential, you will realize that that what we have today is not just better than what it was, but we have a very different perspective that is selling, and each era, each decade had its very distinctive sound and character, and there were certain aspects that were improved on with each era, but other aspects declined. So that exponential development that we have in the sound of our audio gear is not a 100% improvement on all fronts. There are some aspects that are improving as you go with theirs, and other aspects that are going down. And that's why just keeping it really brief, the aspects that are in this era at its peak are the extreme resolution in both in space. So in spatiality, in 3D, we have the extreme pinpoint era. And that's done to 100% or 1000% higher degree than it was ever done before. And at the same time, we are also in the broken tonality era, because that extreme processing to get that ultra pinpoint image, it can be done by breaking the tonality, and equipment manufacturers can get by with that, because nowadays people are so removed from listening to unamplified instruments and vocals that they don't even register that the tone is broken. So I can do vouch for that with by listening. I mean, observing people who listen to gear, when they listen to gear that has broken tonality, about 17 out of 20 don't even notice it. And those 3 who noticed it, they say that this is the worst sound they ever heard in their life. And they, or maybe they won't put in that way, but they will say that even if you give me money, I will not accept that audio gear. Maybe I will resell it and buy something else, but it's unlistenable for those 3 who can hear tone. And those who cannot, they will say for that same gear, this is the best sound, most spectacular sound they heard in their life. And today, this is our era, when there is just everything for the show, everything for spectacular, and no substance. When you want to dive under the surface, there's nothing. It's an empty husk. And going back to Björk, what they did is that they went ahead of the curve, and they don't just let your high-end equipment do the processing, but they did their own processing on the vocals. They did an enormous amount of plugins and filters on it to give extra spatiality, and that's why they put plugins and filters on vocals to make them more spectacular. And they have to be made more spectacular because today's gear is 100% certified incapable of reproducing natural vocals, natural sound in a way that would impress you as a live person singing. So if you have a live person singing, you record the voice, you play it back on that $100,000 equipment or whichever equipment, or even if on a shit gear, it won't sound good. It needs to be processed, things done to it. And now people will say, oh, but you need to put on compression on it, and etc., etc. And you can put on minor things. You can do minor processing, but what I'm talking about now is that they are putting in like 30-40 plugins on a vocal, like that many times filters to alter the sound that much, like pitch correction, 10 different compressors, expanders, whatnot, so that it is not even remotely similar to what was recorded. And if the person, you would hear the person sing or speak in real life, you would not recognize it's the same person who is on the recording. I think that was really long-winded, and I still haven't gotten too much anywhere. And where I really want to get to is that Jürgen was mentioning that maybe part of my lack of good experience with Björk is because I have my compression driver is facing upwards and not facing at me. So if it would face me, then I would have more of a pinpoint experience, which is absolutely true, and it would sound better. And my observation on that I had previously, but I just confirmed again listening, is that actually having the compression drivers fire up, it makes the spatiality even better. So if you're talking swimming in sound, when the driver faces up, the swim becomes like the ocean. So if it points at you, it's like swimming in a stream, up swimming in an ocean. And these ones, the 288s, have that ability, have that clarity to project high frequencies that it works amazingly well. And if I were to have them face me and project the high frequencies at me, then that annoying effect that I noticed with it would be 10 times more pronounced than how it is by keeping them upwards. Because then so now that they are beaming up, it means that I do not get a direct on-axis response. I just get 100% off-axis and the room reflections. So I'm really getting an ambient acoustic space from these drivers versus having an on-axis plus a separate off-axis response. So I think what my experience is, I'm sorry, I just kicked the table, is that for loudspeakers, a big problem why it feels unnatural, the sound that you get. And maybe it's not a big problem for most, because it adds a lot of spectacularness to the sound, is that there's an on-axis response of a driver, and it's very different from the off-axis response. And the manufacturers are optimizing their loudspeakers for the on-axis response. And that's where the driver, the speakers are their best. You get the pinpoint imaging, but the off-axis response is something different. So basically you have two characters. You have one loudspeaker character on-axis and another one off-axis. And the two can be drastically different. And people have to come up with gimmicks to get rid of that. One of them is like near-field listening, when you maximize the ratio of on-axis, off-axis to the benefit of on-axis response. but you will notice that when you do that, you are getting a very highly, even more specialized acoustic space compared to what I'm doing here. Is that now that there it is, the compressor driver facing upwards, so all I'm getting is 100% off-axis response. That I do not have the dichotomy of on-axis versus off-axis. It's just a single character reaching my ears, and the result of that is that the sound is much more ambient, much more natural, and it's yes, it's much less, I would say, less spectacular than facing me. And actually here with these speakers, with the voice of Lancelot, I have the ability that I can flip the compression driver to beam at me or go up. And I had people listen to them, and there's a lot of, some friends prefer it when it beams on you. And others prefer it when it goes up. And it has a very, very different character when I do those two. When I have it beam at me, it really sounds very much like a commercial ultra high-end system. It reminds me kind of similar to a Wilson audio sound, but without the compression of the Wilson audio that it has in the high frequencies. And while the Wilson systems have a lot of strength, I think one of the weakness compared to the voice of Lancelot is that they have a lot of compression in the high frequencies. So when you try to push them like 100 dB or higher, I can hear that it compresses a lot more in the high frequencies than what the 288 does. And however, then the amount of high energy is just so much, it is just insane. And but if your hearing is a little bit like diving down, you are aging already, then that will really push back the intensity of the high frequencies to a level that you will make you think that your ears are as good as they were 30 years before, because you are getting like a plus X dB, that beaming effect from the on-axis response. Because don't forget that these compression drivers are 114 dB per watt meter sensitive, so it's just insane. And yes, I'm tuning them down, but the way I level the crossover, I'm taking into account that they beam first on the ceiling and then it expands to the room. If I have the on-axis response, then that's much more direct energy than going up, especially in the 15 to 18 kilohertz region. That's where it's much more direct, and it can be beneficial if your hearing is already going down, then it will bring up. So now going back to Björk, what is happening here? Why is it unlistenable for me? And the reason is that, so one thing just about this album, now I listened to it, and that's why I haven't done any listening impressions videos in the past half year, because I haven't had time for any listenings at all, and I'm just not doing videos when I don't have a fresh inspiration. I don't feel that it's authentic if I don't have like a fresh, vibrant experience. Of course, I have like tens of thousands of hours of listening with records in my life and CD, whatnot. But I think it's what you need to hear is something that how it impacts real life. So what I really think what benefits everyone is that when I have an experience and I can share about the experience, later on, when you remember like 5 years later or a year later or whatever, then you just remember just a few things about the experience, and your memory just finds it in the A/B comparison category often. To have a really in-depth look into how that album is, how that sound is I think it's like to listen to it and share not just how it sounds, but how I felt while I listened to it, how my body feels. Because that's how you notice that as your stereo gear gets better, it involves more of your body. So for me, that is my measuring scale, my yardstick of the level of my audio system is how much does it involve me. Does it involve my mind alone? Because that's what's happening to most high-end gear that you can purchase in the store from $1,000. Now we are calling that high-end. Bravo. Low-end is now high-end, but that's why I said it's bravo. It's like making the terms mean nothing. Or so from $1,000 to $1 million, everything, it just keeps you in the headspace. And to me, yes, it can be a fabulous experience, and I'm not against it. Everyone should try it out. You should listen to it. It's wonderful. It is an experience, and part of life is to collect experiences, especially when you look at different cultures. Here in the United States, the number one most important thing in people's life is to collect experiences, to make experiences. So when you travel because you have experiences in your life. That's why people from here, from the United States, travel a lot, because it's life experiences. And everything is taken as its value, as your life experience. That's number one. And that's why in the United States, when you look at the average of the citizens, people die by leaving more debt behind them than accrued value. So on the average, basically people value the experience they collect in life, but they neglect their surroundings, what happens in the world, what happens to their children or and their grandchildren. And in other parts of the world, we have very different views, what is important in life, what is important in music. And I think from the standpoint of music listening, it is very unfortunate that that audio is regarded as an experience that is absolutely an intellectual experience. It's limited to the intellectual level, and really what people want to do, what instinctively they are built and conditioned to do, is to have a more encompassing experience, so that it's not just your mind involved, but your heart, your body, your feet, your movement, your health, your energy level, so that it impacts you more, how you feel, and what that it does something to you. You undergo a transformation, and it's not just I listened to something and it was really pinpoint or something. And that's what Jürgen was mentioning too, that it was more than just an intellectual experience. It was like swimming in a sea of sounds, and that is made possible by the over application of high frequencies and plugins in the sound. So the more you process it, the more you can extend the spatiality. And what they've done here on this album is they and I think when I looked into it, they really talk about that they went to extreme lengths for the mastering and editing of the album to give like an extreme spatiality. And they did a great job with that. It's absolutely spectacular. However, the way you can make soundstage spectacular is by increasing the high frequency, the super high frequency information. And the higher the frequency, the more it impacts the pinpoint image. So that's why on this album there is just so much high frequency information, and that is creating that extreme ocean of sound, sea of sound, which is truly spectacular. And by the way, on this album, what was really spectacular for me compared to the YouTube version is the bass. The speciality of the bass is just like, wow, it is just phenomenal. And also it's done by the vocals, so they also did a subharmonic processing for the vocals to make that. So it's truly spectacular, but it came at the price that at the high frequencies like the 15 kilohertz plus region is really rough, really rough. And I'm not saying that it has to be rough, because now I'm going to give you two more examples. One of it is Moderat, more data. And tonight I just listened to this album before I listened to that snippet of Björk. Wow. So here, this is also swimming in an ocean of sound, and if I would say that Björk is an ocean of sound, this is swimming in the universe. So this is kind of like what it reminded me is almost like a quasar explosion or a supernova explosion, and the gravity waves hitting you. It's just and the cats loved it. So Machi she's still there at the listening spot. She's still expecting. She hasn't moved since. She's there. Let me show you. You see, Machi is there. Does it focus? No. Maybe. Let me just wake it up. Wakey. Ah, there it is. There is Machi. She said hello, wiggling her tail. And so it was phenomenal. I make a separate video of Moderat because they deserve it. This has been like this more than made up for that lack of last half year, lack of listening. It is absolutely phenomenal. I still have no true words describing what just happened there, because this is like Björk was just like, wow. It's like an ocean of sounds that just really beautiful. It would be beautiful, except that my head exploded after 15 seconds. But Moderat, they also did very heavy processing on the vocals. And actually the spatial effects are even more spectacular than on Björk, much more spectacular. There, I will mention it, but zero fatigue for the ear, zero discomfort for the ears, and I was listening to the whole album at 100 dB plus average SPL levels. So and I can confirm Machi was totally okay with that. Kintaro also came, but when the bass were hitting, he looked really scared, and that's not just him. It's the bass on this album is just freaking scary. So like such, it's kind of like almost like a gravity waves hitting you, and you feel like your organs being, rearranged on the inside, and kind of like I could literally say that I see that the size of my room is changing, it's shifting, it's just like it kind of like the reality breaking down. This album is just absolutely just wow. Also, I'm bringing another comparison, Vangelis Beaubourg. This album has even more high frequencies than Björk album. This is the album that I ever heard that contains the highest amount of ultra high frequencies. So when we look at the 15 kilohertz plus region, for those of you who can hear 20 kilohertz, check this out. If your system can play it back, and check out the album. On the CD, it's but you know, we have that brick wall, the 20 kilohertz brick wall filtering on the typical, you know, 44 kilohertz CD format, 16-bit format. The way this album was transferred to CD, there it's not nearly nothing. You don't get most of the experience that you get from the album. On the album, it is just staggering. It's like, and the most amazing thing is that when I'm listening to this album, there's I can feel like the it's kind of like someone's doing a surge. Sorry, my camera just blanked out. I thought it was shutting down or something. So it feels like someone is doing live surgery in my brain when I'm listening to it. It's just like you hear the sounds inside your skull. That's where part of the music is happening. It's just unbelievable. Actually, a lot of the album, it doesn't even sound like music. It just kind of like sounds like very strange sounds, like some form of alien music that was not created by humans, was not created for humans, and it's brought to us by Vangelis. And also it's kind of like not that much accessible. You have to be a hardcore Vangelis fan to listen to it. But if you have a chance to have a system that can play ultra high frequencies really well, and you also have the ability to have a hearing acuity that goes to 18 kilohertz plus, this will be a life-changing experience for you. And even though it has really high levels of high frequencies, it did not cause listening fatigue to me. But it has way more high frequencies than Björk. But because they are not distorted, it's not overloading your brain, it does something to my brain. And the weirdest thing was that after I listened to this, I did this I think like about a year ago. Like I noticed that next day and the day after, my hearing acuity improved, and my hearing precision in the high frequencies was better than what it was before. So if you want to improve your high frequency hearing, then listen to Beaubourg from Vangelis. But I have to give you a warning that you absolutely must listen to it on a system that is a natural sound system. So that's the architecture that I am recommending, that when I give advice on how to build audio gear, I give advice that progresses towards natural sound. And the sound that we have today, the commercial sound, is the exact opposite. So on those systems, there's a good chance that on the majority of those systems, Beaubourg will be a very painful experience for those of you who are attempting to hear, and if you have good hearing in the high frequency. But also, this is an extremely good test whether your system is a natural sounding synergistic system, or is it processing the music. So now, I think now I'm getting the questions. János, how can you tell that? Which is the natural version? Which is natural processing? Björk or Beaubourg? How can we tell? And for one reason, and also I can add Moderat to that. Why János? Why you just picked one? I could call Björk the natural and this the unnatural. How does that happen? And my answer for that is that you can gauge the naturalness of a system by putting on a record that was recorded naturally, that had minimal processing on it. And when you go back really back in time, for really early tape recordings, then in that era there people processed less and less and less, and they were recorded by 2 microphones or just 1 microphone. So you had a natural acoustics recorded by those 2 microphones. And now what we have is just we are recording each instrument separately. So and then the engineer recreates an artificial space, sound stage, and our systems are geared towards cranking up that artificialness, and trying to the two try to work in concert to give back a semi-natural, semi-hyper-realistic illusion of reality that is like more pinpoint than real life. So when you listen to, for example, like a piano or violin, or singing on like a Wilson Audio D'Agostino system, of a recording that's specially designed for that system to be given back in the highest fidelity by that system. And of course, you know that there's like maybe like 3 recordings like that. Then you will notice that if you have like people, musicians playing in the same room, that that doesn't sound anything like that at all. It's much more pinpoint coming from the stereo, and it really sounds like, to me, what is considered today as the high end or ultra end or end game, or I don't know what to call it now, is like when you have an amplified concert and the ultimate form of amplification. So there's and when we have live concerts nowadays, it's always like solid state amplified concerts. And now that has become the baseline for people. So when you hear something in coming from a recording on your stereo gear, your baseline for that is the live concert that was amplified by solid state gear. And that's why solid state rules today, because our baseline is the solid state sound and not natural sound, which is like can be very, very different from just like someone singing next to you without PA amplification. And today what gives us the best show, the biggest show, is the ultimate PA system, which must be solid state and high power, etc., etc. And when you have that, the side effect of that is that your recordings that you see behind me, maybe you have 10,000 records, they will become unlistenable because they are not built for show. Most of them, if you have something like recorded in the 50s, 60s, that's where the majority of my recordings is from. Like I have actually like transfers from 1918, maybe 1915, something like that. I think maybe 1908. 1908 might be my oldest transfer, which is now more than a century old, and from that era to maybe like 70s, 60s. So like 1920 to 1960, that's the majority of my albums, and it's just totally unlistenable in a modern setting, or you would say, it sounds okay, whatnot, but now I have this new DSD 200-bit 5 million megahertz recording. I'm just exaggerating, just pick the greatest number that's available today at the time you are listening to this video. Oh, that's so much better. And that just appears to be better because the audio gear is geared towards only playing that high resolution file to a spectacular level. And it doesn't mean that those recordings that were done from the 20s to the 60s, oh, look at that. Kintaro is dreaming and he was meowing in his sleep. And even he had, let me see if we can focus. I think he stopped. But in his sleep, he was running. His feet were like moving, and he said like, and that was in his sleep. That's amazing. Anyway, maybe you heard that in the video, maybe not. Anyway, where was I? So basically, what was recorded back then was music that was not heavily processed by today's standard. That just minimal processing, little processing, and for me, a system's true power, true ability lies where you can resolve that kind of sound to fulfillment. So my system and my system strategy is to resolve the most, to bring out the most out of as naturally recorded material as possible. So, and when I do that, something very interesting happens. It doesn't mean that when I have like a high-res recording, which was special recording, no, I cannot enjoy that anymore. No, I can enjoy that. But also what happens is that I am made aware of the gimmicks that they are using for those modern recordings, and those plugins become much more apparent. And when they overdo the plugins to compensate for the audio gear in commercial circulation, then it's sometimes it's just like when they do too much. And I think on Björk they overdid it, and they overdid it because most people's listening like in the ultra high frequencies like 15K plus, it's not there. And I think where the problem is probably, I think the problem might be just like extreme high frequencies, because when Nelly listens to it, and she has fantastic hearing, for her it did not cause fatigue. And she can easily hear like 17 kilohertz and maybe higher. So maybe where the problem is like that 18, 19, maybe 20 kilohertz, maybe even higher. And that's something that I think that the producer and the mixers, they were okay doing whatever. If there's something there that bothers people who hear it, there's 1 in 1,000 who will have that problem. Let's mix it for the others who can't hear it. And also most stereo systems don't let through that high frequency information, and as I said, like in the digital version, a lot of it is not even coming out. But there's also like what we noticed, that LP nowadays, the big difference between LP and CD is really not the media, because even for the LP the source is digital, but what you have different on LP and the digital version is that they master them differently. And sometimes you will have like a better CD master than a digital master. And in the case of Björk, they done a really amazing job on the bass mastering, and most of the mastering up to like 17, 18 kilohertz. But above from that is just I would say it's unlistenable for my ears. However, for Moderat, they done it in a way that it's joy. Even your cats will be treated by Moderat. And same thing goes for Beaubourg, which has like insane amount of high frequencies, but the high frequencies make for music content. And it's not just the high frequency that bothers you, it's when you have a mess in the acoustic spectrum. And when it's in the mid-range, it's very easy for us to tell if it's clear or if it's messy, because 90% of our brain's processing power for sound is about the mid-range. And when we're talking about extra high frequencies like 15 kilohertz plus, most of us, even for communication, how to communicate it, we don't even have words or expressions or even a thought processes how to communicate what is happening in that frequency range, because most people don't hear it, and we cannot communicate it. But how I imagine it, how I try to translate what's happening, is that even though here for Vangelis there's like so high frequency information, and dB wise I think it's just tops Björk by many dBs, much hotter than Björk, I think. But the sound waves that we are getting are pure and much more defined. There's no distortion added to it. In Björk there's like a ton of extra THD. They are playing with the THD, they are playing with the echoes, multiplication, everything, and your brain tries to make sense of it. and the higher the frequency, the more precise the echolocation. But in Björk, what's happening is that they are giving me too much information and it's overloading the brain, and that's why my brain is just shutting down, because it's giving too much. And it's not just me, the cats too, and everyone who can perceive in that range. It's kind of like almost like noise, like blasting noise at you. And if it's in the mid-range, you will go, stop it. It's very spectacular when that happens, but we can't handle. But when it happens at that high in the frequency range, then when we cannot process it, then it's just appears, wow, there's a lot of things happening, but my brain is not giving CPU power for that region to process it, so it's fine. You are not getting fatigue. But when your brain is giving CPU power to process that information, in that case, it causes extreme fatigue, because the higher the frequency, the higher the precision, but it also means your brain must work more to create a 3D space out of it. So it's kind of like if you go higher in the frequency, you also go higher with the CPU power that's required from your brain. They're playing. So anyway, so as you have noticed, sometimes I'm looking at the camera, sometimes I'm looking at the screen, because I want to double check that it's still recording and it doesn't die on me. So maybe now it's time to just stop and just say goodbye. Hello, Björk. Maybe not holding her tits, but on the side, on arms, more, friendly, YouTube friendly. Okay, thank you for sharing this fun listening session. Kintaro chased away Machi. So have a wonderful day, and if you have these 3 albums, let me know what are your thoughts about it. I have a previous video where I shared about Beaubourg. If you want, just check it out, and I will make one for Moderat. I'm still under the spell of it. This has been just a phenomenal experience. It's just like wow. Okay, so have an awesome day. Bye bye.